Well, I didn't have that on my bingo card. So, by now we know that in the background, Riot is always working on something new and interesting. Maybe it is new shows, maybe it is just big updates for their games, or maybe it is entirely new games that might be multiplayer or even single player. We simply know that in the background, something is always happening, with the main source of these news being the job listings. But only yesterday, Riot revealed their brand new project that has been cooking for quite a while. And internally, it is called Project K, which is basically Riot Games releasing a new trading card game. Again, though this time it is physical, which makes a big difference. Now I know what you're thinking, and this is what most people think when they hear this. Why? Legends of Runeterra is still a thing, and that one struggled quite a bit because it couldn't find sustainable monetization. Well, by saying this, we are essentially answering the why. TCGs are kinda known for their monetization. After which, if we dig a little bit deeper, you may realize that while this move sounds incredibly silly, well, in reality, this is a genius move, and we'll get to that in a bit. First, let's have a look at what is going on, because this is not the first time we've heard about this. Believe it or not, but the first time we've heard that a physical TCG card game is in works was on the Chinese channels about 2 months ago. However, again, at first it was said to be a China exclusive, but of course now it is a global game. Which means that at one point it is possible they were considering only releasing it in China, where the audience is probably bigger. But after it likely received some positive feedback there, they might have decided to turn it into a global release. Also, it is possible that it was a China exclusive at first because they didn't have any publishing deals in the West yet. Regardless, what's important is that yes, Riot is releasing a physical card game. And despite what you might think, it is not as random of a move as you might think. So now, let's hop into the reveal video which dropped with this announcement. It first begins with the introduction of Chengren, the exclusive producer of Project K. But also Dave Gaskin, the game director of Project K. Of course, we all know Dave because he was working on Legends of Runeterra. So now it actually makes sense why he was moved off of the Runeterra team. And now together they announced that there is a new physical card game, or a TCG, heading out into the world. And in fact, they are currently getting ready for launch. The funny thing here is that they talk about how they think they made a game that will serve a different kind of an audience. One that likes social games, but they like to be immersed in the gameplay, or the setting, or the characters they love. As they say that, they show us some League of Legends characters with art you might recognize from Legends of Runeterra, but also Victor, the old Victor, which is not part of the setting, nor is it a character whom you may love anymore. But I guess we'll dive into the design later on. Next, they confirm that Project K is not a physical release of Legends of Runeterra, but it does borrow the champion design philosophies from it. So some form of the mechanics around champions leveling up, or just the champions being the center of the board, will be there. After which they also say that this game is borrowing all of its art from other games that are surrounding the Runeterra IP. So before you saw some Legends of Runeterra art, as well as some splash art from League of Legends. This is very important, because this already makes the production of this game sustainable. And especially when you are releasing a new product, this kind of safety is really helpful. Because you can focus on other things before you can nail down where the board game really is. I'm mainly talking about they might help with the gameplay first before they start focusing on new cards and art. Though again, this is not a digital game, so you can't really patch the game, I guess. But then we also get Cody Christie, who is the director of growth and marketing, who talks about champions. In fact, he is the one who plays Victor, whose deck apparently is all about just building smaller minions. So it seems like both champions and some kind of followers will be part of the game. Next, we also get Laura popping up. You may recognize her from other videos, such as her announcing the ruination that happened in Wild Rift. That's because she's kinda the connection between the lore of Runeterra and the games. So from the immersive side, yes, the TCG should be in line too. And she is playing a Volibear deck. Of course, we also get Mark Merrill, who's been heavily into tabletop games the entire time. We know he plays in Warhammer tournaments, so it makes sense that he would be involved in the creation of such a game. Also, that is one reason why he was part of the announcement that Legends of Runeterra is shifting directions. He is simply a fan of these games. And he is playing Yasuo. And lastly, we also get Cat Cherish, a senior narrative writer. Though I doubt this game will put too much new lore on the table. And she's playing Jinx. So then the video dives into the key points of this game. First of all, it is a social game. So while they designed the game to have aspects for the tryhard audience, because they started working on it from ground up, it allowed them to also give it multiplayer. That's why we saw 4 people playing it at once. But it doesn't stop there. The game supports all kinds of game modes, including 1v1s, 2v2s, and big free-for-all battles that is all about getting allies and backstabbing each other. This all plays into the key aspect of a social game. And the team seems to be proud of how this aspect came out. Next, they also mentioned that the game has a really good entry point. After which they show us 3 card backs. And they don't explain a single bit. So are these variations of different decks? Or was this just concept art to show us what they were considering? Well, we kinda have no idea. I will say though, the blue one probably stands apart the most. After which they also point out that yes, because this is a TCG, the game also definitely has a collectible aspect. And let me tell you, someone who rarely plays these games, I still occasionally get some cards somewhere for collector's sake. I mean, I've also painted some Warhammer and I'm still yet to play a single game. And you know what? Yes, I will open up some decks on stream for fun because I'm a collector, not a hoarder. So hopefully these cards will have some special foils and stuff like that. Although, at first glance, if you have a look at the cards, we'll talk about that in a moment. Next, the video dives into organized play. You know, it's how TCGs need a community to thrive. But if you want a community to grow, it needs to go beyond just selling decks at a store. You need the game stores to promote the game, but also you need regular events, which also includes competitions. In fact, they mentioned a whole competitive ecosystem. They mentioned they want the competitions to go from the stores all the way to regional events and hopefully even global events. I'll be honest, this scares me a little bit. I don't really have an insight into the events that happen around tabletop communities. I'm not really sure how popular these are around stuff like Warhammer. But every time I see a game launch and they immediately start going into how there's gonna be an entire sport around it, it usually doesn't go well, and that's because you always need to focus on the casual audience first. After you have a really good base of just normal people playing the game, then you can dial it up for the sweats. Because it is very rare for people to immediately get into hardcore play after a game just comes out. Because for these, you really need some dedication and commitment. If that game doesn't turn out to be that good and your casual players leave, well, now you are a one-eyed king among the blind and all the commitment went down the drain. So, I'm really curious to see how their competitive aspect goes here. With that said, it is very important to mention that yes, Riot are the ones investing in this. So they expect these events to be a loss, which will grow the community. Yes, I know that in theory that is still a gain for Riot, but you know what I mean. Also, they want everyone to have the best possible experience from day one, regardless of where you are. And this includes having the cards and the accessories in different languages, which likely means they will translate the game rules and the cards and card mats? I'm not really sure what other accessories a card game has. But mainly, this means that there will be a staggered release for the game. Some regions will simply get it before the rest. So now it makes sense why the game was first announced for China. The game will first launch there in early 2025, and that's because there they already have a partner who can print the cards, distribute it, and set up some events. They likely don't have that kind of partnership in the West yet, and so the rest of the world likely has to wait for now. So all they can do is to set up some IRL test events, and apparently there will be a limited Chinese arcane set for sale. But again, it's Chinese, so it's probably not gonna do much for the West. But thankfully, there will also be a pre-order for the English version. But remember, we still have no idea when the game actually releases in the West. But that is pretty much it for all the crucial information. At the end of the video, they joke about going back to work and working on the second set of this game, which means the first set of these cards is pretty much locked in. But interestingly enough, they still keep calling the game Project K. So even now, they still don't have a proper name for it. At least that shows you what Riot has been always good at. Gameplay first. Really, who cares about what the game is called in the end? Enter a 2xKO joke. So, after hearing this, there are two main things that come up. First of all, I really have to get something off my chest. I hate the card design. Am I the only one? Well, apparently no, I'm not. In fact, right now, that is the #1 feedback. People are not opposed to a League of Legends TCG, despite the jokes about Legends of Runeterra dying for this. No, they are fine with it. But people would also like to collect the game. And in order for them to do that, the cards have to look good. And right now, even though there is a fat work in progress logo on the entire video, they just don't look great. And in my opinion, the main source of this cheap look is the white border. Because if you have a minimalistic design on the art, that white border makes it look like someone just took a sheet of paper and they printed the card at home. So just to test it out, I made the border of the card dark gray, and now it actually pops out. I'm not sure if the highly saturated colors are that important for gameplay. I mean, they mentioned something about a chaos deck, so I'm gonna assume that the colors correspond to the different playstyles. But in this case, a smaller colored indicator would be totally fine. Maybe just keep the banner up for the colors, but let the entire rest of the card have the classic League of Legends design. Because for the most part, League is actually using Piltover graphics. I mean, look at the card backs! Those look awesome! Now the front of the cards is using similar geometry, but the colors just kinda ruin it in my opinion. I would much rather use the black border and the unified gold color for the text panel. But that's just my opinion. Which is not too different from what you can find around the internet. I mean, look at Reddit, the one place that is never wrong about anything. Are these card designs placeholders? They look pretty bad. The cards look boring, I don't know. Man, those cards look uninspired. Looks like a cheap One Piece TCG knockoff. If you make trading cards, the cards itself should look like you want to collect them. Oh my god, those cards are so ugly. Not a fan of the visual design of the cards, they feel a little bland. But other than that, I'm interested. So yeah, keep in mind that no TCG games nail their design on their first try. Just take any TCG and look at the first editions. Stuff like the colors and the text panels are redesigned all the time. But this takes us to the other thing worth pointing out. And that's the fact that while you may see a lot of people joking about this game, the odds are this is a really smart move on Riot's part. And that's not only for the TCG game itself, but many people didn't realize that this will also benefit Legends of Runeterra. You see, Legends of Runeterra had the issue of being too generous and the people could just get all the cards. So while the game was good, the monetization couldn't keep it up. This means it even struggles to fund new art for the cards. But now, because this TCG is using art from all the other games around this IP, including Champion Splash arts, and actually a lot of Legends of Runeterra abilities, this means that the reverse can happen here too. The TCG can release new cards with new art, which Legends of Runeterra can then turn into its own content. In a way, the TCG can set up Legends of Runeterra for new development. This is something most people overlook. And honestly, with a TCG, you don't really have to think about the monetization that much. everyone knows what's gonna happen as long as you have the booster packs as part of the monetization. So we can joke about Legends of Runeterra dying for this, but if it died, so there is another game that can milk whales, and those can now revive the game. So yes, we may be waiting for the TCG to funnel new art into Legends of Runeterra if the TCG is successful. Because again, they did mention that they will use the other art for now. And to be fair, that absolutely makes sense for them to do that. Especially when you are making a new game, you are avoiding so many risks with this. And yeah, remember that in theory, TFT was also an asset flip at the beginning. They reused champion models and even their splash art for all of their gameplay. And look at where the game is now. So I hope the TCG turns out the same way and they slowly start making their own art. But that's really it for the announcement. Yes, Riot dished out yet another one of their secret projects. And now it seems like they are back in the world of board games, which is not an unfamiliar territory to them. Remember Tellstones and Mechs vs Minions. But funnily enough, there is one more thing I would like to mention. During this video, when we have a look at the cards, you may notice that the cards have certain types. For example, there are legends, and there are spells, or there are squoodles. So yeah, that one made me pause for a moment, because it is a weird mistake. And here's the thing, I don't believe it is the one thing you may believe it is. I don't think that is an AI artifact. Calm down. Because all the letters you can see here are letters that really exist. However, they are special characters that you can type if you hold down the right Alt. You can try it yourself right now. Just hold down the right Alt and press random letters. Some of them will turn into special characters. And this especially happens if you are using a keyboard of a different layout from the traditional English one. So when someone was working on these cards in Photoshop, when they wrote the word spell, they had the right Alt on auto hold. And their brain was just on autopilot, so I guess they didn't notice it. But then if you are wondering why the two L's are different, because it is just L twice, well, just know that in some languages the placement of a letter affects how it looks. For example, in the Czech language, we have a letter for long U. And if it is at the beginning of a word, it looks like this. And if it is at the end or somewhere in the middle, it looks like that. So after you press the letter L and then you press space, it just changes the appearance. So I hope I am not on copium, but no. It's not AI. I hope.